Okay, so we should be streaming now. I'm gonna post this on Patreon and then click the link and just make sure that we're good. Yep, looks like it's working. Yep, it is. Okay. Yay, people will hopefully start joining us soon. Did
That's
you
good.
read the book?
I read most of it. I did not get to finish it, but I did look at
It's
the ending.
super long. It
Yeah.
is super long. I never do audiobooks. I'm always just a reader on my Kindle, and I had to supplement with an audiobook because it was taking forever. And so when I had that long drive day to go to that funeral a couple weeks ago, I actually turned on the audiobook, which I virtually never do. But this it was over 600 pages. Very, very long. Very good,
Yeah.
very long.
Yeah, it was a really good book. I just got caught up at school and I just had to actually try with
Okay,
school.
but are
So,
you going to be sad if I give you spoilers?
no. I'm a spoiler person. Give me spoilers. That's like what
Okay, you're
I
fine with
look up I
that.
look yeah, I look at the ending of books so I know what I'm getting to.
Okay. Well, okay. So, hi, first of all, hi, skanks. Welcome to our very unofficial, very casual, very loosey goosey book club meeting, which is frankly overdue. The first book that we did yesteryear, we did in June. This was supposed to be in July. And then the book took me so long to finish that I kept having to like push it back, push it back. I finally finished it last week. It technically was before August, but then we didn't get around to scheduling it until August. So I didn't know how long it was going to be when I was reading a super long book behind it, or I'm sorry, before it. And so then by the time I started this one, I was just like going to be tragically overdue. But in any event, I did finally finish it. Thank you, Audible, for some supplement with an audiobook so that I could get through it. I knew almost nothing going in. I had one of my friends who I was in a book club with for many, many years before it kind of imploded, which is not, that's a story for another time. Um, had texted me and said, I'm reading this book right now. It is amazing. It is so good. I haven't been this into a book in so long. And I think that it had basically just come out when she sent me that text, and I was going to choose a different book for book club, and she made me change my pick because she was gushing about it in this text. Since then, the book has like basically exploded.
Mhm.
I think it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. I think a ton of, book clubs are reading it right now. It was the first book in like, I don't remember exactly, many, many years from the same author who wrote The Help. Did you watch the movie The Help, Lizzie?
Yes, I did. When I
Yes.
was
I
like
read the,
7
yeah.
years old.
Yeah, it was like a long time ago. I read the book
Yep.
and watched the movie, thought it was great, loved
Mhm.
it. Anyhow, she has not written anything since The Help, which was obviously like a mega hit. And so I think this was really highly anticipated, blah, blah, blah. I can say definitively, having read it now, that I think it will absolutely be one of the biggest books of the year.
Oh yeah.
Um, everybody's like loving. I will not be surprised at all if they make it into a movie as well. In fact, I think that they
Mhm.
will.
Is
Mm,
she's one of those that's
one
in
of
literally everything.
those that's in
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, that's what they're gonna have to look for the next up and comer. It's like, I am fully speculating, but I would be shocked if after the response that it's received that they didn't make it a movie. I feel like it's like
Oh yeah.
pretty obvious. So anyhow, basically the story takes place kind of it shifts between the first person narrative from Birdie to Meg, who is an orphan in an orphanage. And Birdie her family has fallen on hard times. Her sister had previously kind of left the family because she got married and moved and was doing very, very well, allegedly, with her new husband. And the sister, in the beginning of the book, was going to stay with her sister essentially to ask her for help for the family because the family was uh almost penniless. They had like nothing left. Way earlier
40s.
than that. Okay, this is 1933 that this story is taking place. And in the height of the Great Depression. So, yeah, but apparently orphanages existed in the United States up until the 1960s, which I found to be very interesting. Um, I don't have I'm actually very kind of fascinated by the transition of how they
Hmm.
determined that an orphanage was not the best place psychologically for these children and kind of transitioned into
Yeah.
the foster system. And obviously orphanages and the concept of having an orphanage still exists in many other places in the world, but hasn't
Hmm.
existed here in the US since the 1960s. And orphanages like the one in the book were mostly all charity. They were like charity based, often through religious organizations, were the ones who were mostly in charge of these. And in the 60s, when it transitioned to foster care, the foster care system, it became like state backed, state run. But these orphanages early on, like in the setting of this book, were just religious organizations that were basically running them as a charity service, but they had no like state backing, federal funding dollars, anything like that, which is also kind of a crazy concept to think about that human lives essentially would be just taken over by these whatever organization decided to rent a space and put up a sign essentially, and without very 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 little government oversight. It's really kind of a crazy concept, and one that I wouldn't mind to learn more about, because I will admit to the fact that I don't know a ton about it. But anyhow, I found it to be a very interesting setting for a book. I love to read historical fiction. I like these sort of time period pieces, even though I don't get to read a ton of them because I'm usually reading thrillers. But I was excited to kind of dive into this one with very little going in other than just hearing that it was great. So that is how I found myself starting to read it. Lizzie, did you do any preliminary investigations before you started?
No, I saw that we were doing it for book club, and then
Yeah.
literally, I think like 2 days later, I saw it plastered everywhere in Barnes and
Yeah.
Noble,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay,
There
well,
were like wait
so
lists. In fact, I had planned on doing a book giveaway again, and when I went to the bookstore, they had 0 copies. They were waiting
yep.
on an order, and I was like, forget it. Like, they're actually hard to get, which in today's world is not very many books, I don't think, have that kind of a reception or a launch, a debut. Not since, Harry Potter have we had an issue, I don't think, stocking books in the stores. But this one kind of made that big of a splash whenever it launched, and everybody's super into it. Okay, so I'm just going to start reading some questions, but Lizzie, feel free to like cut me off if anything comes in the chat that you want to speak up on, or if
Okay.
we have any, anything to read out. Okay, so first, and these are the questions that were gathered by the publisher. Have you read The Help, and how did this one compare? Was the first one. I did read The Help. It was so long ago that I read it, though, that I didn't even have in my mind like a particular comparison between the two. And I didn't find myself ever thinking about The Help really when I was reading this book. It was very independent standalone for me. So it didn't influence me into liking it or disliking it in any way. I think that it had just been so long. I mean, The Help came
Yeah.
out so long ago,
Hmm.
and God, I read so many books too that I just have no place in mind for something that I read 15 years ago. Even though I thought The Help was great, and even though I really enjoyed it, I've been through so many things between now and then that I never really considered a comparison. If I had to compare it now after the fact, after having read it, I would say I don't know if I would say I liked it better. I would say I liked it equally. I think that they were both
Yeah.
really good stories. I think that they had like a different tone to them a little bit. Um, I think that they were kind of honing in on, while in relatively the same period or era, they were honing in on like different issues of that time, which I think is great. I think it's good to get a different perspective on the same kind of setting from different protagonists and a different issue that was going on at the same time. But I would say I really enjoyed both of them, and they're both great. And if you read this book and you enjoyed it and you have never read The Help, if you're like the last person alive who never read or watched The Help, I would recommend it. It was a great book as well. Okay, the next question is why was the Calamity Club the right name for this novel? Okay, I find that question interesting because I when you first open the book and you first start it, Birdie is going to buy prophylactics, if you will, uh, contraception from the drugstore and is trying to like buy them in bulk. And it immediately slips from that very first scene of her being in the general store to starting to tell the backstory. Like it backs up and goes back from the beginning where she's going to be traveling from home to go see her sister. And then you start to get the narrative of Meg from the orphanage and how she is, and also how she came to be at the orphanage. You get the whole story of how her mom left to go to the store and then just mysteriously never came back and she never really knew what happened to her, but a doctor showed up and took her to the orphanage. So I was probably halfway through the book. It's very, very long before I recalled that very first scene with Birdie in the general store and had to be like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot that we were tying this somehow back into Birdie buying a ton of condoms because I got so like lost in the narrative that was in front of me and in this very interesting story by the time she gets to the house and like realizes that they're in a bad financial situation and the husband has run away before we even start coming up with what ultimately becomes the Calamity Club, I had already like kind of forgotten that that's where it was going and was just like really living in the present parts of the story, which is I think very indicative of just how immersive and great the storytelling was because I found myself being so fascinated by the story behind why the husband had run away, what their financial situation was, what the mom maybe knew or didn't know and kind of uncovering the childhood of the father or not father, the husband who had just left the family in shambles. And I was so into and so focused on that part of the story that I forgot that we were going somewhere with a bunch of condoms. Like totally forgot about that entire portion. And then as the women start to come in to make up the Calamity Club and we're going to figure out a way to get this family out of poverty and they invent this club where they were going to it was a front for a dance club, but really it was essentially a brothel, prostitution. And they were going to use this to make money for both families now. You now had two families that were essentially penniless. Um, and that's when I realized, like, oh yeah, she was buying all those condoms in the store. I had like almost completely forgotten it because you were so many hundreds of pages in to the deep dive behind what was going on in this house that I really like kind of almost forgot about it. But in any event, I think the Calamity Club is a really clever name for the book because and you saw them kind of go through the different options whenever they had to name the dance club that was going to be the front. And I think that Calamity ended up playing into it well because it's just subtle enough that you wouldn't think that it was necessarily a prostitution institution. And it could be the name of a dance club. I mean, it's a perfect name for a dance club if it was a pure intention 10-cent dance club as well. So I thought it was great. Calamity Club describes it kind of perfectly. And with all of the behind the scenes fear and tension and are we going to get caught and is the sheriff going to come and there was it kind of I feel like all comes together perfectly with that particular word. What do you think, Lizzie?
Yeah, I think it like tied in perfectly. It also just, it the title like kind of like told you where you were going without, you
Yeah,
knowing
it did.
anything.
And as per usual, I just like, huh? Because
Yeah,
okay,
and
here's
like
my I read Kindle, and so I've said this before, I don't ever see the titles of books, and so I don't really think
mhm.
about them. And people will say, "What are you reading?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't even know the name of it. I love it, but I don't know the name." But when you read on Kindle and you're not seeing the cover of the book, a lot of times it's really hard to remember the name, the title of the book. And so with this one, I did actually know it because again, it was splashed everywhere, but I had kind of just like forgotten that that's where it was
Mhm.
going. I didn't know that that's where it was going to go anyway, but I had forgotten about the whole club of it all until Birdie starts to come up with the idea. And then that's when I was like, oh yeah, we're going somewhere with this whole club thing. But I very nearly like forgot all about it because I think that again, I think it just really means that her writing style is really, really
Mhm.
good and really immersive because you could find yourself just kind of totally forgetting about the fact that at the beginning of the book she was buying condoms in bulk because you were so interested in how Meg got to the orphanage and what's going on there and then how Birdie comes to reunite with her sister and all the things. Anyway, but I think it's an apt name. Okay, the next question is the story is lengthy at over 600 pages. Did the length bother you or were you fine with it? Yes, it was long. I've said that already 600 times. It was very long. At no point though was I like tired of it or bored. The story actually it's not that they started the dance club in chapter 1 and we read 600 pages of a dance club.
Yeah.
It didn't even get going as the Calamity Club until, I don't know, probably like 60% through the book, 50,
Mhm.
60%. So the entire first half of that book was really character development, story building, really like giving you a solid foundation of where all of the characters were at the point in time where they started the club. And even though it was really long, much longer than what I'm used to reading, it didn't bother me at all. It really didn't. And the only thing is that it just took me way longer to finish it. But other than that, I was never like, and sometimes I will. I do not say that I love every book by any means. In fact, I'm very choosy about books the same way that I'm choosy about
Mhm.
movies. Like I only want to watch the 3 best movies of the year and that's all. Do not give me an
Yeah.
average movie. 80% is not good enough for me. Like I won't do it unless it's really, really good. I try to be very choosy like that about books as well. And I don't love every book I read, even if it had really good reviews. I can tell you about some really well reviewed books that I thought were terrible. I genuinely really liked this from start to finish. There was never a point where I was bored, tired of the characters, dreading going to read it, knowing I wasn't going to make very much progress. Like I was very into it for the entirety, even though it was so long. So I would say that it didn't bother me whatsoever, aside from just it took longer to finish. And if you're a
Yeah.
fast reader, somebody who reads during the day, I only read at night before I go to bed. I could have definitely given it more time if I really wanted to, but I have my little routine and that's what I pretty much stuck with. What about you? I know you didn't even get to finish it, Lizzie. So how did
No,
you
I
feel
didn't get
about the
to.
600 pages?
Well, it didn't bother me. I loved what I read. I mean, I just had to actually try at school, but
Yeah,
I was
it's long.
completely fine with the length. I mean, would have been nice to have been able to finish it, yeah. But like, I was fine with it. I was doing the Audible book because that's
Oh,
I
yeah.
can listen to it on my car rides, so that
Yeah.
it was completely fine. I just ran out of time.
Okay. Do you listen to a lot of audiobooks?
Um, it just kind of depends. Like, I'm very choosy about my books too. Like, I'm not just gonna find a random book without knowing
Yeah.
anything about it and pick it
Yeah.
up. So, yeah, I listen to all of my books on Audible, but it
On
has to
Audible?
be
Okay.
like, yeah.
Okay,
I
so
got
I'm
Audible for
not
school one
very
time.
familiar with Audible. Like I said, I don't really use it, and it was a little bit jarring for me. And I know so many people love audiobooks, like that's all they do. They never read,
Hmm.
they just only do the audiobooks, and it's kind of like a podcast in that way, I guess, at that
Yeah.
point. Um, which sounds great in theory, but when I started the audiobook, because I was only doing it to supplement for the fact that I had a long drive and I hadn't gotten as far through the book as I wanted to, so I supplemented a little bit with the audiobook. The voices were not what was in my own mind, and it was the
Hmm.
most jarring, like, weirdest thing
Yeah.
ever, like, especially when they would do the voices for some of the other, women who were prostitutes in the Calamity Club, like it would be the same narrator's voice, but she would just like use a different twang on it or whatever. I found that
Yeah.
to be so weird. So is that normal for an audiobook? Like
Yes.
is that is how they always work? It's like one
At least
person
the
and they
ones
just
that
like
I
use different weird voices?
yes, at least the ones that
Okay.
I listen to. I don't know. I guess when I'm driving, I'm just listening to the words that I kind of don't
Yeah.
listen to the tone.
To
I'm
yeah.
trying not to wreck, but also listen. So I guess I'm just not focused on the tone.
I mean, I got used to it after a certain period of time, and I think that it's largely because I stepped into it after reading so much of the book myself. Because by the time you have read that much of the book yourself, you've like fully developed your character.
Mm-hmm.
You know the way that they sound, you know how the house looks, and like you've laid it all out, the visuals in your mind and everything. So then it's like watching a movie. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I thought Edward Cullen was like the worst casted Edward Cullen of all time when Rob Pattinson
Yeah.
got that role. And I was just like, this is the worst. Like, this is not
Mm-hmm.
Edward in my mind as I know him. Kind of like that. Like I was just like, this voice is weird. This is absolutely not the voice that I had in my head. But
Yeah.
okay. It was just strange. But that's like, I'm just not used to audiobooks and in general and how they work. So I think that was just something for me to overcome in general with the audiobook world. Okay, do you have anything to read before I get out the next question, Lizzie?
Yes, there was one question. I'm scrolling up. Someone wants to know what your real well reviewed books that like flopped in
Oh my
your.
God. Did I say this last time? Tell me if I did. I hated this book so much. The River is Waiting. Did I say that last time,
I
Lizzie?
don't think you did.
I
I don't think
freaking
you
hated
did.
that book and it had good reviews. I'm going to look on Goodreads and see what the reviews are. Everybody loved this book. Oh my God, this book is so good. And I will say it started off kind of compelling and then it just, oh my God. I thought that it went so poorly from like, I mean, not that it's dark, like the beginning is dark, but at least like the story is kind of like going somewhere interesting. And then it completely fell off for me and I hated the entire rest of the book. I hated the way it ended. I hated everything about it. Hated that book. The River is Waiting by Wally Lamb. Take it off your list. Let me see what else. The Correspondent, I liked that book. Buckeye, I really liked that book. Theo of Golden, I liked that one okay. These are just like what is recommended in that vein on Goodreads. Wild Dark Shore, I liked. That one was a little different. Heart the Lover, I read, and I think I was largely ambivalent. The Names I liked. Um, but I would say none of those did I like as well as I liked this book.
Yeah.
My second place to this book, I don't know, I really liked The Correspondent and I really liked Buckeye. The other ones would be less than those. Those two would have been better than any of the other ones that I just named off that were recommended by Goodreads. If you read The River is Waiting. Oh my God, I hated that book. The River is Waiting. Terrible. Terrible. FYI is awful. And sometimes because I read a lot of thrillers, and the problem with enjoying a thriller is that once you've read 100 thrillers, it's hard to impress you anymore. You've pretty much got
Mm-hmm.
it. Like you've pretty much narrowed down what is missing from the plot to complete the story and it's hard to surprise you anymore. And I will start a lot of thrillers now that I read like a chapter or two and it's so bad that I just won't even continue. It's a lot, especially those ones. What is the very popular author who got she wrote The Maid, I think, and it got really popular and now they no, it's not The Maid. That's not who I'm thinking of. I think it's Frida McFadden is who I'm thinking of, but I don't want to say it wrong and then I'm slandering poor Frida for no reason. Um, but I think it's her series of books that now they crank. There's clearly like a ghostwriter in play and The Housemaid. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
that was The Housemaid.
The Housemaid went viral, like it got huge, and now all of a sudden there's a new Frida McFadden book out like every 2 months,
Yeah.
and they are not very good. Which I didn't think. I thought that The Housemaid was like a cute story, but the writing itself wasn't particularly good, and none of the rest of the books are that good. None of them. Okay, there's my. I've been a hater long enough. Do we have
Before
any
you keep
other
going,
questions? Yes, please cut me
this
off.
is not a question, but I'm calling it out. There are one, two, three, four people in the chat that said they did not read The Help, have never read The Help, and I just thought
Oh,
that deserved to
wow.
be called out.
Okay, well, if you enjoyed this book, you will absolutely love The Help. And it's totally possible that, at the time The Help came out, you were in a different place where maybe you weren't reading as
Yeah.
much, and it's very easy not to, like, go back and read old stuff and just to, like, keep reading things that are new. But, yes, if you haven't read The Help, you would very much, enjoy it, especially if you enjoy, like, historical fiction, and I like learning more about issues that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
very well versed on through a historical fiction book, a lot like this one, kind of learning about the orphanage system, how all that was going on, and just kind of the state of the world in the Great Depression and particularly in the South. All of that to me is very interesting. I like to kind of learn about topics that way. So if you are interested in this kind of time period and setting, I think you would really like The Help. And I think you would also like The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna writes a ton of historical fiction. A lot of it is really good. The Four Winds specifically has to do with the same time period around the Great Depression, and it's really, really good as well. I just have book recommendations for days and days and days. So you just have to stop me at some point. Okay. While this is an ensemble cast, we follow the perspectives of Birdie and Meg. Why was it important for us to read their thoughts and feelings? I loved both of these perspectives, and I was actually I actually love because of the two sisters, you kind of have like the good sister and then the bratty, terrible, selfish sister. And I'm very glad that we had the perspective of Birdie rather than her terrible sister, because we got to kind of see everything through her lens rather than the awful sister. And I think that if we would have been reading through the eyes of the awful sister, it would have impacted the overall experience because she was such a brat and so terrible. And I could see how you would like get tired of hearing just her negativity and also her stupidity. So I think that it would have gotten old. So I think bringing in Birdie the way that she is, and she's like a very rootable, lovable character and with good intentions. And I think that um, was a very, very good choice in terms of having a book this long too. You don't want to stay in something that's overall just very negative and draining. I don't think for
Yeah.
this long. I think that having Birdie's side of the story made for a much more pleasant reading experience. And then obviously Meg's story is great and gives you the perspective of she's an orphan, but the selfish sister volunteers there only, by the way, because she wants to be like a society girl, and this is like what the society there was no pure intention at heart for her in her volunteer work. But she was volunteering at the orphanage that Meg was in, and she develops a close bond with Birdie. Meg and Birdie develop like a bond together as she starts attending with her sister. I thought that both of their perspectives were really good, and I enjoyed hearing specifically from them in the first person. If there was anybody else that I would have liked to hear first person from, it would be, I think, Charlie. But I think that it was just in an attempt not to have, too many perspectives kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm sure that was very intentional by the author, but I did really like Charlie's story, and we don't ever really hear an entire backstory for Charlie. Like, she was one of the characters who came in very well through the book. She's Meg's biological mom. Other than her leaving Meg in the very beginning of the book, you don't hear from her until well into it. And I'm sure that it's an opportunity for the author really to, if she wanted to, pick it up and do more from the story from either her perspective, or also I'm kind of interested in the terrible husband who ran away. I'm sure that they go through a whole thing with how, his family tried to intervene because he showed signs of homosexuality, and they had him committed and had like all this testing done on him and all this stuff. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a good opportunity for the author to also re-dive into that story more intently if she so chose. Would be my opinion. Okay, which character were you most engaged with? And on a similar note, which one do you think you are most like? Oh my. Ooh.
Ugh.
I definitely felt the most engaged with Birdie. Like her rational, logical voice kind of throughout was great. Um, Character do I feel like I'm most like? I don't feel that I'm like any of these characters, Lizzie, do you?
Um,
Don't say I'm the bratty sister. It's rude.
no,
Thank you.
I don't know.
Where are you from, by the way, Lizzie? Georgia?
South Georgia.
Yeah. Okay. And this is set in Oxford, Mississippi. So not
Yeah.
same, but
It
ish,
not same, but kind of the same.
but not
Um,
different. Yeah.
yeah, I would say
I don't think I'm as nice as Birdie, that's for sure. Like I think that I think that I would have been way more direct with my sister than Birdie was. And she kind of treats her very delicately and, oh, is this a good time for this? And I don't want to upset her with this. And I don't think that I would reserve myself in that way. So I'm going to say not Birdie for me, which I guess unfortunately does
no.
make me the rude sister, but it is what it is. It's very possible.
I mean, I think you're better than her. I mean, everyone's better than her, but
Well, I hope I wouldn't be so dumb. She needed to
no,
be shaken, this girl. Like, wake up. What is wrong with you? I also
you're in the world.
hate I hate whenever a character is not like solutions oriented.
Mhm.
And Frances for me was not solutions oriented. She was like she had her one version of reality that she wanted to exist in, and that was it. And everything for her was just about that version of reality, and instead of just like facing what was obviously in front of her.
Yeah.
Least favorite type of character. So again, I'm really glad I didn't have to hear it from her own voice and instead got to hear it from Birdie's perspective. And Birdie was frankly just like not mean enough to her. I think that she could have been a lot meaner. She
You
was
could be a
very, I
mix.
think, nice to her considering the circumstances. I would be like, you're an idiot. So there's that. There's
You could be a
that.
mix of Birdie and the rude sister.
Yeah, I guess.
A
I do
nice,
think,
healthy mix.
yeah, that's good. That's a good one. Okay, this novel features plenty of historical detail from the clothes to the food of the era, but also some horrific elements, including the forced sterilization. What were some of the more surprising details? Did you learn something new from the story? I feel like we've touched on that a bit because at the very beginning, talked about how I ended up looking into like the whole orphanage situation. That was definitely all new to me, as well as the forced sterilization. I cannot say that I was aware of that whatsoever. Um, Also, some of the doctor who comes in, I don't know if you made it this far, Lizzie, but there's a doctor who comes in. She's a resident physician there, and she's actually still in training, but she's like the only physician that they could get to come in and test the girls for STDs and make sure that they were, not suffering from any STDs in the work that they were doing. And she would drop into the story through this doctor. They would drop a lot of really interesting information just about gynecological practice of the era, how it was obviously completely male dominated, and the kind of mentality that they treated women with in general versus men, and things like this forced sterilization. You also got a little bit of the backstory with the husband, who I believe is Rory. Although I think somewhere I read it said Roy. No, it is Roy. Was I wrong? Was it Roy the whole time and I called him Rory in my mind the whole time? Um, but also his story and his, they thought that his perverseness, right? This homosexuality, the tendencies that he was displaying was something that was corrective, and that they could send him off to this institution that would do like this shock therapy exercise on him. Now, I had heard maybe in other books I read or whatever loosely
Mhm.
about that, but also that was another fascinating detail to me that was like, oh, this is something worth looking into. It's crazy and eye opening to think about these things, and then to also put it into perspective of how recently that was still true,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to, yeah, like women's care. And and all of
Mhm.
those things. And also, they talked a lot about throughout the book when they end up running the Calamity Club is essentially a brothel, but just how they were so scared of being busted. Like the whole time you're worried, you're on the edge of your seat the entirety of the book, worrying that they're going to get busted by the sheriff,
Mhm.
who is married to Garnett, who runs is the head of the orphanage. But, he's sniffing around the place. Like they go in and have a conversation with him. They see a car driving up a couple of times. Is it the sheriff? Like the whole time you're on the edge of your seat, just wondering, are they going to be okay? Are they going to make it out of this? Are they going to make as much money as they need and close it down before they get caught? But that brings up the really interesting point, which is that men who go to the brothel, virtually nothing, there's no, consequence. There's no,
Yeah.
it's no problem for them to go and to pay the women for the services. All of the burden has to fall on then the women, and how they
Mhm.
are, like outcast from society, and they are seen as, all of these terrible things. And then, of course, obviously the legal consequences, they face jail time, all of these. I can't remember exactly what the terminology that they used was for these like nefarious acts, but the discrepancy between how um, the man could actually be the one who seeks out the services, pays for the services, but then the consequences only apply to the woman in the half of the equation. All of those just really fascinating topics for me to learn more about and look into even after the fact. I really really enjoy books that, again, that kind of take you into an issue that maybe you're not super well versed on and lets you learn about it through the characters and through the story. I love that idea in general.
Yeah, I would love to talk to my grandmother about, because she kind of lived like a little after the 30s, but she was
Yeah.
40s. And I
Uh-huh.
would have loved like to have the opportunity. My sister, she's an English teacher. She's actually writing a book right now
Uh-huh.
about kind of women in this era and how they got
Oh yeah.
treated. And so I think, I don't, she's probably read the book by now, but um, I would love to get like all of the women in
Yeah.
my life that I know perspective, because it's very reflective of society today, even.
Oh, totally. And it makes you realize too, in ways it makes you reflect on how far we've come, but in ways it
Hmm.
also reminds you of how it is similar, like how those
Yeah.
underlying themes, especially when it comes around, like I said, like women's health and
Hmm.
kind of like the stigmas around women's health. I feel like when you read about this and you can go, oh, okay, wow, well, we've made a lot of strides against that. But at the same time, some of these
We
ideas really are still kind of prevalent and
Yeah.
exist in society even today. And I would
Yeah.
say definitely in terms of sex work and prostitution and those type of
Hmm.
things, that stigma absolutely still applies.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's no problem. It's never like you're never questioning it from the 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 customers, right? It's always like you're always just coming down on it from the perspective of the woman who may be in any type of a situation where this is uh definitely not something maybe that she wants to do. But in the case of Charlie, like she's just trying to make enough money to get her daughter back, or whatever the circumstances may be. It just seems like society is always so quick to um you know reflect negatively on the woman,
Hmm.
and the men like don't really, no one cares, it feels like, most of the time.
Yeah. Uh, Comment says, I mean, women do have more sensitive ears according to Camus. So,
That's true. I feel like I feel like we definitely know some people who would identify with the male dominated um, medical industry that is laid out for us here in this book, and some of the practices, some of the very old school conservative practices as well.
I'm
So
thinking Jackson Mickey um is an
yeah.
example. He is,
Oh yeah.
maybe one
Maybe
day
one
he'll
day.
let Jessica do what she wants with her body. But anyway,
Anyway, not to make it about Big Brother, but
I
So
mean,
me. Oh my gosh. Okay, do we have any other comments before I move on or any other questions?
um, oh, you do have a question. Did this book hit harder as a mother?
I think that as a mother, I was very interested, but I knew that the story was going to come back to why Meg was abandoned in a way that was beyond the mother's control. But I was definitely like ready to get there. I really wanted to understand like why she was left abandoned and then went to the orphanage. And obviously, she spoke very often about missing her mom and wishing her mom would come back for her. But I felt like the way that it was set up, I knew that it was going to go somewhere that was unintentional. I honestly wondered if, the mom hadn't just been killed or like involved in an accident of some sort was really kind of what was going through my mind and thinking about it. But then, so once that answer was revealed, it was, obviously she didn't ever intend to leave her daughter and she did what she had to do to get her back.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where I assumed it was going to be just because her life was very stable and everything was good kind of leading up to that moment. But I would say that if anything, like if a message in it resonated for me as a mom, it would be that one. But also, it was very, very sad when Meg would talk about the visiting days where the prospective parents would come and would all be interested in the babies and how sad that was for like the older children getting passed over and just kind of waiting to age out and to go into labor. In the book, they got sent to a canning factory was the labor of choice, but they were essentially just like biding their time. They had no real hope of getting adopted. That made me really sad too. That's just like a really just kind of sad, sad thought, which, you can kind of make sense rationally, but it was really heartbreaking to hear it from Meg's perspective over and over throughout the course of the book. Okay, the next question is Garnett is the head of the Lafayette County Orphan Asylum and is especially cruel to Meg, separates her from the other children, makes her live in unsanitary conditions. We also learn she is on a crusade against Charlie and helps enable Charlie's forced sterilization. This all stems from her husband having an affair with Charlie and being Meg's real father. What are your thoughts on Garnett as the villain? I think she's a great villain in terms of villains because she's horrible, awful, terrible, and evil. So I think that she's a great villain in terms of that. I don't know. I'm sure that there are and were people that terrible. I like to think that there weren't, but I'm sure that there were. Like
Oh
she was
yeah.
so awful. She was so awful. It was very sad. Very, very sad. Okay. Meg's mother, Charlie, comes into the picture, and Birdie has reservations but does trust her. Would you have trusted Charlie right away? Yeah, I wouldn't trust anyone right away. But that's just me. Obviously, she does end up being one of the main figures in the book, and like I said, very very much just in the pursuit of getting her daughter back, and her intentions were pure. But honestly, would I have trusted her right away? No, I wouldn't trust anyone right away. I've read way too many thrillers. That's
Yeah.
not happening. Absolutely not. You can't trust anything anyone says ever. Not to bring it back to Big Brother, but ever. Okay, definitely not. When Charlie suggested to Miss Tart that they open a paid dance club, did you know that she was really talking about a brothel? Yeah, I think pretty, especially since we opened the book buying condoms in bulk. The all of the stars really aligned for me there. Once they started talking about a dance club, I was like, oh right, the condoms, got it. It's coming full circle. So I was lost in time for a while, but it did kind of all come together at that moment. Why did Birdie go along with it? What would you have done if you were Birdie? I think that Birdie went along with it because she was desperate to do anything to help her family. And really, they had very, very little to work with. It's not for any lack of trying. They sell everything out of the house. Like she even asks, like, would you be willing to sell the house and maybe like go live somewhere else? And this lifeline was kind of the last thing that she had for her family back home, was to go visit the sister and have the sister give them money. So when she finds out that even the sister doesn't have any money, it's like, okay, now both are penniless and we have to come up with something. And they have very, very limited resources. Obviously, this is a time when, in general, the entire area was suffering. Like, it wasn't just
Yeah.
them. So it's not like they could go to anyone for handouts. I think that it came from just a place of absolute desperation. And she was absolutely scared and worried the entire time. Like I said, for the entire book, you're on the edge of the seat of, are they going to get shut down? Are they going to get caught by the police? Whatever. And that was a risk that she was desperate enough that she had to take. And I found myself, even, which I shouldn't be doing this, I should just be enjoying the story, but I found myself checking to see how far I was through the book so that I could decide if in my mind they would get busted or not. Because I was like, if they're going to get
Yeah.
busted, they're going to have to leave a certain amount of time to explain it. And so by the time I was like 93% through the book and they hadn't been busted yet, I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about their odds. But I was like panicking. I was like, just shut it down. Shut it down. Like, don't open tonight. Cause I kept thinking they were going to get caught. I kept thinking they were going to get caught. And I could not wait for them to freaking close shop. I'm like, you got your money, get out. I was very worried for them. Okay, we haven't touched on this yet, so I want to read this question. Meg is eventually adopted, but it's not smooth sailing. While the family is rich, Lucille is a cruel alcoholic, while Tom is a recovering one who is trying to find his own way by writing a novel. Tom develops a bond with Meg. What was your impression of these sections, and how will it all impact Meg going forward? That whole section is something that I don't think that we've even talked about once yet. After Meg
Oh.
actually does get adopted, and she goes in with this married couple who it turns out really didn't have the best of intentions anyway.
Mm-mm.
They were supposed to, they took this money from his family and they were supposed to go adopt a baby with it. So rather, they went and adopted a kid very inexpensively just to say that they did, and then used the money to buy a bunch of liquor, and we're never really planning on acting motherly or supporting her. Like, it was essentially just transactional for them to, for the wife to continue to fuel her alcoholism. And put Meg into, while it was a wealthier home and circumstance, it certainly wasn't better. Like, she was still missing her mom and she was still talking about, wanting to be back with her mom. And even though she did end up developing a bond with who was her now adoptive father, and they had a good relationship, it was never really like a home to her.
Mm-mm.
And she was, still certainly better than how she was being treated at the orphanage, but certainly still not home and not the same and not great. And I was actually really interested in that storyline as well. I was kind of unsure in the beginning why the character of the adoptive mom was like so aloof. And then when it kind of became clear that she was, an alcoholic who was like largely disinterested and was just trying to get the family off of their
Mhm.
backs, it obviously became more clear. But I thought that that part of the story was also really, really interesting, and that the author did really great character development with that side as well. How will it impact Meg going forward? I think if anything, honestly, it will be a traumatic experience for her, but I think that it almost made it that much better when she does go back to her mom and to Charlie. Charlie is her mom. That was redundant. When she does get back with her mom, it makes it like, oh, like finally like an exhale for her.
Mhm.
She was in this terrible situation, then she went to a slightly less terrible situation, went through, this awful experience. I think that it made for her homecoming back with her mom kind of even sweeter and better and back where she always belonged, which, frankly, had it been like this really great home, that would have been a whole nother story for Charlie to have to kind of wrestle with. Like, is it the right thing? You know, are they giving her a better life? Are they giving her better opportunity? It was kind of nice for us, the reader, to feel really good about how her story ended and for it to be over, you know, overall like heartwarming for Meg to go back to her mom at the end of it. So I personally was very happy. I didn't want the club to get busted, and I didn't want Meg to be stuck with this weirdo family who never really wanted her in the first place. So, all things good, I think, for the readers personally. Okay, do you
A
have
couple people
anything for
were,
me, Lizzie?
yeah. You just said you didn't want the club to get busted. A couple people
Yeah.
were a little disappointed there wasn't like a big moment, a big showdown.
Yeah. Well, it was always teetering on that. So, I mean, I can kind of see that because that was kind of the fear in the back of their minds that they kept talking about and that the narrative kept pointing to. And so it definitely felt like that was the way that it was going to go. I did not want them to get busted. I was like, "Oh my god, this is going to be terrible if it, I did think that surely even if they get busted, somehow they're going to find a way out of it or somehow they're going to come up with some clever way. I
There's a
did think that that
resolution to
was,
this.
yeah, like there was a major possibility of that happening, but wasn't really sure how it would play out. But I was like in my own mind screaming at them to close the doors. I wanted them to close the doors way earlier than they did even. Like I was like, if you've got a couple $100, if you can
That's all you
pay,
need.
like, that's all you need. And then especially once they found out the mortgage had been paid off, it was like we close now, like right
What are we
now.
doing?
Like I was stressed to the max. Like absolutely not. It felt very, very risky, but I never wanted them to get busted. I really didn't. I was scared for them. I was very scared for them.
Someone
But
said if
I
the
could see that.
adoptive parents were good, it would have been a little too Annie.
Yeah, that's true. I think it would. I and honestly, the way that she wrote the adoptive parent story was interesting too. It was I found myself like almost equally as fascinated by his family and their whole
Hmm.
story and you know, this girl from New York and her alcoholism and he's trying to reform. And then when he was writing his book, I was like, "Oh, this is great. He's writing a book." And then it turns out he was just plagiarizing F. Scott Fitzgerald the entire time and it was like he was a mess, this man. He was a mess. Neither of them, I don't think, equipped to be parents, despite the fact that he was actually good natured and actually, like, you know, had a heart and really cared about Meg to some degree. Neither of them, frankly, were in a position, I don't think, to be adopting a 9-year old and becoming
They definitely
instant mommy
wouldn't.
and daddy.
Yeah, they definitely wouldn't get approved today in
Yeah, I
today's
don't think so.
society.
And I wonder, I mean, this would be something worth looking into, but I wonder, I'm sure she did a ton of research around, again, the orphan system and whatnot. But particularly in the book, prospective parents only had to prove that they had $25, which is so insane. $25 is what the book, The Calamity Club, costs now, you know, but like
Yeah,
in the time that this story is unfolding, you needed $25 to adopt a child. Like,
I wish.
that is crazy. Like, that is so, so, so insane. And I would have to assume that that is at least borrowed from some sources that she found at the
Yeah,
time, that she wouldn't just, you know, pick this random figure out
25
of
bucks.
thin air. But pretty wild to think about that really all they had to do was like, okay, prove that you have $25 and that you're somewhat capable. And here you go. Like, you can have a 9-year
A
old.
child.
Yeah, and when I was doing the little bit of research that I did on how we transitioned from a system of orphanages into foster care, it did say that, you know, there was a lot of people misrepresenting their intentions. Like this was a real thing back then to bring cheap labor into the home, to
Hmm.
essentially just like kind of like you know what other movie I loved? It Takes Two. Do you know this movie? This Mary Kate and
I
Ashley
know
movie?
it. I think I've watched it.
Okay, hardly
I
historically accurate or relevant because one of the Olsen twins grows up in an orphanage, okay? So we're not going to get hung up on the facts. That's not what we're doing here. It's full of loopholes, but we overlook it. Anyway, one of the families that adopts this Olsen twin in that movie is like a kid collecting household, and they just collect these kids to make them work at their family dumpster, the family
Oh,
dump service or whatever. And that's like the whole premise behind this movie. It Takes Two, these like long lost twin sisters. Anyway, again, not historically, not this was not whatsoever historically accurate, but apparently that was a real problem in the orphanage system as it existed in this time, was that people would roll up with bad intentions and just freaking adopt all these kids out of the orphanage and, take them into terrible circumstances.
yeah. Do you know
Really
Newsies?
sad to think
You know
about.
do you know the musical Newsies?
My kids skipped the musical Newsies, unfortunately. They did have it, and my kids were tired from having just come off another. So no, that is not one that I'm familiar with. For me,
That's
it's just
like basically
Annie
the
and
same
It Takes
thing.
Two. Oh, it is? Do they just like
Yeah,
collect
it's
kids?
they yeah, they take all these
Yeah.
teenagers who are homeless and
Uh,
make them sell newspapers. And then when they get a pay dip,
yeah.
they like try to put them in like jail basically. And that's
Sad.
basically I just spoiled the plot of Newsies, but
I mean, I'm
it's
glad that we
wonderful.
can make some cute musicals out of the whole thing, but I
Yeah.
think the actual historically accurate information is very dark, very dark.
Yeah.
And I assume that
Mhm.
it was like a largely misused system, full of, not full of, maybe a few, do gooders with good intentions here and there, but largely I'm sure there was a lot of terrible things that came as a result of it. Anyway. Okay. What did you think of Birdie's relationship with Jack? Nah, I wasn't super into Jack myself. Jack was Birdie's love interest who came in, and, she was immediately head over heels for this man who was separated, not yet divorced. I don't know. I'm a pessimist. I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this guy basically being like, "Oh, I can't be," he was like, "If I'm here, I'm not home with my son and I really like my son." All right, this sounds like a lot of resentment brewing beneath the surface, taking
Yeah.
him away from the familial home. I don't know how it's going to work long term. It's nice that the author tried to give Birdie like a beautiful love story, but I don't know if Jack was it. I'm going to be honest. I just don't know if he was the one. I'm
Yeah,
pessimistic.
like it kind of like took away from like the real task at
Well,
hand. Like,
she just also to me was like a little bit naive about. I would need more information about the
yeah.
legal wife and your feelings around not, because he spoke a couple of times about like, "Oh, I feel guilty that I'm not home with my kid." Okay, well, I'm a little pessimistic and thinking that maybe a year from now you're going to feel the exact same way and you know what I mean? And maybe that's for the best. I'm not at all suggesting that he shouldn't be home with his kid. I think that he probably should. I don't know. I'm a little hesitant about Birdie and the married man. I'm a little
It
hesitant.
it was a different time. No parent was home with their kids back in the 30s.
Well, he was like a traveling banker or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, not a huge Jack fan. Birdie could do better. She doesn't. I don't know. I don't know. I have a better ending in my own mind for Birdie than Jack, but whatever. Okay, eventually Francis and Mrs. Tart return home and they are shocked to find out the truth about the dance club, but their tune changes when they realize how much money they made. Were you surprised Mrs. Tart was seemingly okay with it? And what does that say about the desperation of the times back then? I actually liked Mrs. Tart and I liked her better than Francis. Like, I thought that she was actually, like, other than sending her son away from some very questionable practices around homosexuality, I thought she was pretty cool. And we didn't dive into it, and they didn't really dive into it too much in the book either. But I thought it was really interesting that Mrs. Tart and Francis, despite all of the factors at play suggesting that husband who's never coming back, like this dude was like a total loser who left you with, like, frankly, lost all your money, took all your valuables and ran away, and that like somehow those two still maintained a relationship. I don't know how realistic that is, but they went together to like go find him, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like it would make more sense. I realized that Francis was like desperate for this marriage to stay together and for it to all work out and all the things. But I don't think that many people, having been left by their husband, would share a hotel room with their mom while they were looking for them. Like they didn't have a great daughter-in-law mother-in-law relationship as it was. And so then especially in that time with all that tension, it's kind of crazy to me that they would maintain a relationship close enough to be basically roommates for a couple months while they go out looking for him. But Mrs. Tart was a more likable figure, I thought, in the book than Frances, personally. Frances was very bratty. Mrs. Tart was kind of chill once you got to know her. And obviously, they would have never been okay with it, but money talks, you know? Once they didn't
Yeah.
have to worry about living on the streets, they were fine, which is pretty typical. Okay, the story ends with Charlie rescuing Meg and taking her far from Oxford. Bertie will return to Oxford for Jake and to start a business. It seems that Francis will stay with Roy despite it all. Were you satisfied with the ending or did you want more closure? Absolutely not satisfied with the Francis and Roy of it all. We never really, like I said, this opportunity for the author to write a sequel to the book because we never
Yeah.
really got the complete picture on him, what he's been doing, what all went wrong. I do think that there's a good opportunity for the author in that. But in terms of this book, I wasn't satisfied with the way his story ended. I wanted to know more about what he was doing. All we got were these like fleeting phone calls and messages from Francis. Never got like the full breakdown. And obviously, I thought that Francis, frankly, should have never gone looking for this dude in the first place. Like, bye. She was very subscribed to the idea of having this picture perfect marriage, which is, I do think probably historically very accurate for that time
Yeah.
period. And especially coming from little means to where she had elevated her life to by marrying him. Of course, she wanted that picture to stay intact, but I wanted her to have like a little bit more respect for herself in the situation for sure. And be willing to go off with Birdie. She never really appreciated Birdie enough either. That also annoyed me.
Mhm.
Like Birdie did everything for this girl and she always just saw her, always like treated her as like less than and annoying and it was like, she literally just saved your whole life. That
Yeah.
Frances sucked. I did not like her. She is not a likable figure in this book whatsoever. Never gave her like really the respect. And Birdie, again, too nice, was always okay with it for whatever reason.
Yeah, someone
Okay.
literally just said Birdie was a little too kind, like
Yeah,
kind in a way that people now would be kind, not in the 30s.
I would agree. She was way too nice for my liking.
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, she was a great character to root for and to read from the lens of, but very, very forgiving, very nice, and frankly, just like kind of to the detriment of her sister. Like, I feel like her sister needed somebody to be like, wake up. What are you doing? Anyway, okay, I'm going to read the last question here. What are some of the key themes? How did the author balance the light with the darker elements of the time period? And again, there were certainly tons of dark elements that you could go down so many rabbit holes of. And I do believe, just based on having read this author's work before, that it was a lot of accuracy throughout. And I'm sure very well researched and all the things. Again, I was happy to visit this time period and kind of see more about the potential situations that could have occurred at this time. This book is fiction, but you have to imagine that there's probably somewhat of a similar story
Yeah.
out there that was a real life story that would very closely mimic the book. And I think that is also modern day topical as well, if you're talking
Yeah.
about sex work in general and how the men versus women and the whole thing, which we touched on already. I think that it weirdly is also has modern relevance.
Yeah. It really like makes you put our current society and the state of our world right now into like perspective of
Totally.
Like,
Especially when it
yeah.
comes to like women's reproductive rights and
Mhm.
like the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. A lot of kind of modern day kind of sprinkled in there that is compelling, I think, and alarming.
Yeah,
Alarming.
how we've come a long way, but we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, that's all the questions on the book. I really liked it. I would say I would give this a 4.5, which is high for me. I don't do a lot over 4.
Yeah.
So for me to say 4.5, I feel like it's going to be the book of the year. Like, I feel like this is the book that people are
Mhm.
going to be talking about. This is the book that people are going to be buying as Christmas gifts for, to take as like the white elephant gift at the New Year's party, whatever. Like, you're going to hear about it a lot. People are going to be reading it a ton. And, but I think it was great. I don't think it was overhyped at all. I would be interested to see actually on Goodreads. I'm going to look it up and see what its current rating is on Goodreads. That's where I look at all my book review numbers. Um, but I think it was worth it. I think it was a great book. Definitely the best thing that I've read this year so far, I would say.
Yeah.
And I only read really good stuff, or I try to. Okay, it's at 4.62 stars on Goodreads right now.
Yeah.
So that's like a really high
We're,
rating.
yeah.
Um,
There should be a lot of 5 stars to keep it that high.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and that's a ton of reviews. Sometimes you can have high ratings, but you'll notice it. There's only like,
Yeah.
a handful of reviews, and that's why it's so
Mhm.
high, especially when something first comes out. It's people
Yeah.
are a little bit less objective, but this is a ton of reviews and it's honestly higher than basically anything. So for example, the last book that we read for book club was Yesteryear and it has 3.91. Which I do
Yeah.
think that that book was a little bit polarizing, and you have a lot of people who were offended by it because they might subscribe to traditional lifestyle, downvoting that book a
Hashtag
lot.
tried wife.
Yes, downvoting that book and saying that it was offensive. So I would say Yesteryear is better than 3.91, but has been downvoted because it pissed some people off. It made some
Yeah.
waves. But other books that are recommended for Goodreads, one of them is called Whistler, and I haven't read that yet, but it's on my list. It's not the next book club book, but it is on my list. And then Mad Mabel, which I just finished that as well, is also suggested on there. But anyhow, this one has higher ratings than anything else that it suggests underneath it. So again, I think it's going to be pretty much the book of the year. I think it will like top all of the best of 2026
Yeah.
lists that'll be coming out late in the fall or in the winter. Um, I think so. I suspect that it'll be the book of the year. And like I said, probably a movie. Did anybody come up with any good ideas on who's going to be cast in the movie version?
Um, not really. No, put some people in the chat while we wait. Someone asked, did you like Mad Mabel and what would you rate it?
I didn't love Mad Mabel. I liked it. I didn't love it. It was good. And I like Sally Hepworth and I generally enjoy like everything that she writes and I read everything that she writes. Um it was a good story. I didn't like it as much as I liked Calamity Club, but I liked it. It's not
Mhm.
life changing. Like it's not one that you're going to finish and lay in night and ruminate about it and be like, "Oh, what,
That was
it doesn't
such a
give you
good
as
book.
much to think about after the fact, but definitely worthwhile and very readable. But I didn't like it as much as this one. It's not as I shouldn't say it's just not as like necessarily important. And I don't always want to read everything important. Sometimes I read, really mindless, stupid books as well. But this one definitely had more of a message, like an underlying message and an underlying tone. But Mad Mabel was a good book and a very enjoyable story as well.
Um, Someone said Dolly needs to narrate as adult Meg.
Oh, that's funny. That would be a good idea. Oh my God. Just don't read The River is Waiting. Whatever you do, that book was awful. Not to bring it back to that. Okay. Anyway, nobody needs to hear my more hates. I can go ahead and announce to you what next month's book club is going to be. Are you excited, Lizzie? Tell me you're
I'm very
excited.
excited.
Thank you.
I wish I had a drum roll thing.
If I had my soundboard plugged in, I would, because I do have one on there, but oh well, we'll just pretend.
I'm
Okay, so
planning to.
as you may know, if you've been watching my recaps, I've been telling you basically every day that I'm watching Girls for the first time, and inspired by my only recent venture into girls, I'm going to be reading the Lena Dunham biography, autobiography, which is called Fame Sick, by Lena Dunham. That is going to be our next book club book, a memoir. Lena Dunham's Fame Sick. Get excited, people. And I do not read a lot of memoirs. I really don't. The last one that I read, though, I love Strangers by Belle Burden was fantastic. That's a side note. Anyway, I think I'm going to love this Lena Dunham book because as a Swiftie, I also know a ton about Jack Antonoff, too
Yeah,
much. And I know that he is kind of part of the book. And I'm really excited now that I'm watching Girls and I'm late to the party and I'm watching it for the first time, but I'm obsessed with it and I love it. And I'm really excited to hear her talk about kind of the creative process behind that. At the
yeah,
time that Girls was big and everybody else was watching it besides me and no one was telling me how good it was, I kind of was like, okay, like she made a show, not a big deal. Now looking back on it and knowing how young she was doing it, I'm blown away and impressed when I'm watching it. I'm like, I cannot believe that she was writing, directing this. Like, this is insane. And the show is so good and it's so funny. And anyway, so I'm really, really excited to dive into it. Never really, I've always largely been like kind of Lena Dunham ambivalent in general because I
yeah.
wasn't a big girls fan. But now that I've stepped into the girls world
Mhm.
and I'm so in love with it, I'm really excited to read the book. So that is the grand reveal of next month's book club is going to be Fame Sick by Lena Dunham. How are you feeling about that, Lizzie?
I'm very excited. I'm
Okay,
gonna
good.
start. I'm gonna start probably tomorrow or Wednesday.
I'm sure she reads her own Audible, so that's
Yes,
perfect for
that's what
you.
someone said. That would be a good one
Yeah,
to listen to
to
because
listen
she
to the
probably
audiobook.
narrates it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could totally get behind that as well if it's in her own voice because then it feels so authentic. And also, this is a weird thing to say. I like the sound of her voice. Like when I'm watching Girls, I like the way she
hmm
talks. I don't know what she's doing phonetically, but I it's enjoyable for whatever
yeah. It
reason.
just scratches an itch.
Yeah, I like it. So anyway, that's the announcement of the book for next month. Fame Sick by Lena Dunham. I'll, pick a date when I get close to finishing it and we will do another live. Thank you for joining me on my literary journey for which I am not qualified. All I do is read and have henceforth decided that I am a book club founder. So there you go.
I mean, that you sound pretty qualified. You have to read.
All I do is read. That's it. I've
Yeah.
been at it a long time though, and I've got a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions. This one was good. This was successful. This was our best book yet. It was between this one and Yesteryear, and I say this one was better. So
Yeah,
that's my opinion. But I'm excited. I'm
I
excited for
agree.
Fame Sick. Thank you guys for joining us. Does anybody else have any last questions before we go?
Yes, get them in, get them in.
Yeah, I get them. What's happening on the live feeds? What have we missed for the last hour?
Well, I haven't watched most of all today because
Oh,
I've
that's right.
been,
You've been at work all day.
I've been dancing. What I heard was Mallory's been spilling stuff, but I don't think Drew believes her.
Oh, yeah. He still is oblivious to the fact that he's the target, I believe.
Yeah.
He's just not wanting to believe it, which is funny. How much did we hate him when we thought that he had a power and wasn't using it? And the
Oh,
whole
very
the whole
much.
world was like, "You're the worst." And then he never had
You're
it to begin with.
terrible, and then he
So
didn't
funny.
have it.
So
I, I'm
funny.
I'm gonna laugh when he probably gets evicted this week because he doesn't really think that
I do
he's
love a
getting
blindside,
evicted. Yeah,
but I
and
won't have
Devins
had time
and
to order him a poster.
yeah, Devins and Barrett are still like, no, you got the votes. You got the
I know,
votes,
it's
my
so
dude.
funny.
He does not have the votes.
All right. Well, we will be back into our usual lane, which is talking about Big Brother on Thursday for Wednesday's recap. But this has been it for book club. And I love you, little smart little reader skanks. Good job. Good job working on your
He can
literacy.
read.
All right, I'm gonna end our stream now. Lizzie, say bye. Thank you, Lizzie, for being our
Bye.
moderator again.
I had
Out of the
fun.
goodness, out of the goodness of your heart, you little philanthropist.